Today, we're diving into one of the most bizarre and honestly tragic stories in modern American history. It's a story about massive wealth, Olympic glory, and a truly shocking act of violence. This is the Foxcatcher tragedy.
And that's really the core of it, isn't it? You have this American dynasty built on just unimaginable wealth, and then you have an Olympic hero who's a symbol of discipline and pure integrity. So how on earth did these two worlds collide in such a violent, bloody way? Well, let's unpack it.
So let's just get right to the brutal core fact of this whole thing. On a cold day in January 1996, John du Pont, an heir to a massive American fortune, murdered Dave Schultz, a beloved Olympic champion. To even begin to understand how a moment this horrifying was possible, we really have to look at the world John du Pont came from.
Okay, so first we need to understand the scale here. We're not just talking about any wealthy family. We're talking about the DuPonts. This is a dynasty whose history is, deeply woven into the fabric of America itself, and it's full of power, innovation, and some serious simmering problems. I mean, the DuPont name, it's just synonymous with immense power. For centuries, their chemical empire literally shaped industry, politics, and even war. They amassed a fortune that's almost impossible to fully comprehend.
Just let that sink in for a second. Not millions, billions. That's a level of wealth that can create its own reality, A world where the normal rules just don't always seem to apply.
And this is where things get really interesting. It suggests that John's crime, as uniquely horrific as it was, might not have been a complete anomaly in the family's more recent history. I mean, you look at the case of another heir, Robert H. Richards IV, who avoided prison for such a serious crime. It just raises these really difficult questions about wealth and privilege and accountability. It kind of hints at a pattern of turmoil bubbling just beneath the surface of this powerful dynasty.
And all of this, it leads us right to the heart of the story, Foxcatcher Farm. This was John du Pont's huge, sprawling estate, which he had transformed into this world-class training facility. On paper, it was supposed to be a patriotic haven for America's greatest wrestlers.
And here you really see the two central figures side by side. On one hand, you've got John du Pont, the heir with unlimited money who desperately wanted respect in a world he could never really conquer on his own merits. And on the other, you have Dave Schultz, an Olympic gold medalist, a man who earned his fame through pure talent and hard work and was absolutely beloved by everyone in the wrestling community. These two worlds were on a fatal collision course.
So this is how it all came to an end. In 1996, on the grounds of his own estate, in front of witnesses, including Schultz's own wife, John du Pont drove up to Dave Schultz's driveway and just shot him dead. It was sudden, it was senseless, and it was absolutely horrifying. Now, after the murder, things got even crazier. Du Pont barricaded himself inside his mansion for this dramatic two-day standoff with police before they finally captured him. So let's take a look at how the justice system handled such a high-profile and really complex case.
The verdict was not straightforward at all. The jury found him guilty of third-degree murder, which means they believed he acted with malice. But, and this is a huge but, they also determined he was mentally ill. Now this is a key distinction, right? It's not an insanity defense, which would argue he didn't know right from wrong. Instead, it's an acknowledgement of a severe mental illness, which ultimately led to a prison sentence of 13 to 30 years, instead of, say, being committed to a psychiatric hospital.
And that is where his story ends. John du Pont, the heir to one of America's greatest fortunes, died behind bars in 2010. He never saw freedom again.
And this whole thing leaves us with this one central question. Was this simply the violent, tragic outcome of one man's descent into madness? Or was it something more? A dark cautionary tale about what happens when immense wealth and unchecked power are allowed to completely warp reality, with devastating consequences for everyone caught in their orbit. That's the question that still haunts the legacy of Foxcatcher Farm.